Another shocking case was brought to our attention this week as we learned that an Afghan migrant was found guilty of raping a Scottish teen during the early hours in a park. 21-year-old Rapula Ahmadzai approached a 17-year-old girl sitting on a park bench in Elgin, Murray, asking if she had a boyfriend. When she responded that she didn't, he told her that he would be her boyfriend now and then proceeded to rape her. Just another case of horrific violence against British women that seems to be getting more common by the day. I don't know about you, but I seem to be reading about these cases on an almost daily basis. It was, of course, just last week that we were talking about an asylum seeker from Sudan found guilty of murdering Rhiannon White, a young mother who will never see her son grow up after suffering roughly 20 stab wounds. Now, I tried to talk yesterday about what is going on in Britain in a pretty fiery debate on BBC Question Time, which was held in that beacon of diversity, Bradford. Watch this.
On the current trends, by the next general election, on the current trends, we will have another 181,000 illegal migrants coming into this country over the next few years. You say they don't commit crime, violence, etc. What do you say to the family of Rhiannon White, the young mother who was murdered by a man from Sudan? What do you say to the family of the 8-year-old in Lambeth who was raped by an asylum seeker, or the 12-year-old in Nuneaton who was raped by an asylum seeker, or the 10-year-old in Stockport? But this is the narrative that we have, and if we talk about it, we're far right. If we talk about it, we're racist.
Well, I suspect you feel, as I do, very frustrated, very angry with the state of the country and what's happening. And it isn't just here. It's happening across Europe, all over the place. A shocking case you probably haven't heard about recently happened in France, where an Algerian woman raped a 12-year-old girl before murdering her. And the details, to be frank, are too graphic to disclose before the watershed, and I'm just not going to share them. The 27-year-old woman who took the young girl's life was under orders to leave France after failing to renew a student visa. But nobody in Britain in traditional media is even talking about that case, even though much of France has been. And of course, while I was in Bradford, I also wanted to get across the key point, which is about the national inquiry into the rape gangs, or indeed the lack of it. Check this out.
Why has it taken the Labour government so long to give us a national inquiry into the truth of the rape gang scandal, the mass abuse of white working-class girls by Pakistani Muslim men? Hang on a minute, Matt, we are talking about the decision by the King to strip Andrew of his title. We're speaking in Bradford. We're speaking in Bradford. Bradford refused to hold a local inquiry into the rape gangs.
Well, indeed, of course, Bradford politicians did do everything they could to avoid holding a local inquiry into the rape gang scandal. And so I just wanted to remind the local people of Bradford what indeed has been going on in their city. We need that national inquiry, and we need it now. Now, why is it that they don't want to talk about violence against women? Nobody in Question Time wanted to talk about this, only me, apparently. All they want to do time and time again is sweep all of this under the carpet. Of course, much like they swept the rape gang scandal under the carpet for decades. They're just repeating the same mistake. And if you talk about it, you're far right. If you talk about it, you're Islamophobic, you're Nazi, etc., etc. But they're ignoring the evidence, they're ignoring what's happening in this country, and they're gaslighting the rest of this country. And I'm going to keep talking about it, as always. Joining us now to discuss it is the CEO of Freedom from Abuse, Marilyn Hawes. Marilyn, can I just ask you, why even now, years after we've known about the grooming scandal, we're learning about all of these horrific cases in the newspapers on an almost daily basis now, it seems to me, why is it that now Westminster still has this inbuilt refusal, this tendency to downplay this issue of violence and abuse that is being meted out against British women and girls from people who shouldn't be in our country to begin with?
Can I first congratulate you on surviving Fiona Bruce last night, because frankly I wanted to slap her.
I don't advocate violence myself, Marilyn. I just want to intervene there. But I did have a very stiff drink after the show.
What irritates me, BBC are woke, aren't they? And what you were trying to get across last night was about it it was a certain type of migrant that comes in here, not ones from Ukraine and genuine people that are seeking to come to this country, but we are talking about feral people. These gangs are actually also, they're bringing in, they are paying for certain ethnicities to come in and join the rape gangs. Now, it is absolutely horrendous. And if I can just, on one side of this for a moment, do contact me about what's going on in Hillingdon, because it is an outrage about the illegal immigrants. And I don't care what anybody says. If you come in here without your paperwork, you are illegal. I couldn't go to France without my paperwork. So if you come in here illegally, you're illegal. But
I noticed that briefly, Marilyn, last night on the show, where a number of the other panelists used this new word of irregular migration. And I did pull them up a couple of times because this is an attempt, of course, to actually minimise, dilute, downplay what we're dealing with, which is illegal migration.
Exactly. They're minimising it, and they're also minimising what's happened to these women, then girls, who have been raped on an industrial scale. I mean, any child sexual abuse is horrific. I deal with it every day of my life, and I'm trying to help and get help for people who have suffered this. But we are talking about, and it's still happening. Don't think it's gone away. It's still happening as we speak. So it's all very well for Keir Starmer to, and he so eloquently said, I think I read on one report where he actually said, and I quote, we don't want to use judges because it would require all ongoing proceedings to finish, because that would obviously interrupt and corrupt the investigation. And, because if they're in court, we can't talk about those people because it's a live case. Well, you can go on forever saying that because it is still going on. So
indeed, we've also seen those reports, Marilyn, of course, in London from charity workers, social workers, former police officers who are saying in the mainstream press now regularly that since 2006, one former detective said he knew of at least 50 cases in the capital city, yet today Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, the Labour London mayor, is routinely trying to downplay the issue. Now, of course, Marilyn, the BBC would say that they are a neutral organisation. They would say they're not woke. They would say that they are balanced and they're giving room to both perspectives, both sides of the debate. But there has been in legacy media, has there not, an instinctive tendency to focus on crimes when they involve the children, women, girls from minority communities, while glossing, downplaying crimes involving women and girls from particularly the white working class.
Sadiq Khan needs to be, he won't resign because he's arrogant, and he's also a great friend of our great leader, Keir Starmer. They're both useless. They should both go. The whole lot should go, quite frankly. And I think he's a little weasel myself. I really have got no respect for him whatsoever. And I mean, I have known, I've done my job for 23 years. I have known for over 20 years what's been going on across the country and in London. If I know it, and you're telling me he doesn't know it, and he's close to Sir Mark Rowley, it's absolutely rubbish. I mean,
well, just hold that thought, Marilyn, because we want to thank you. I just want to bring in tonight's panel and get their view on this. We've got acting deputy comment editor at the Daily Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, political commentator Kai Wilshaw. Poppy, the argument there that this is still endemic, this is rife, this is happening right now across the country. Yeah, I have to say, I'm just sharing a personal view here. Going into, say, a BBC Question Time audience and a panel, I was struck at the dominant view there was to essentially downplay this, minimise it in Bradford, a city that, of course, has rejected a local inquiry into this issue, even though the local Conservative MP, Robbie Moore, said he suspects that you're probably looking at a Rotherham-style level of abuse in Bradford, but still legacy media saying, don't talk about it, don't talk about it.
Well, it's remarkable because it's not just that they're not talking about it, it's the double standard here. I've spoken about before in your show, there were loads of prominent feminists, including some MPs, who came forward to say there is no link between immigration and crimes against women, which is just frankly untrue. I mean, this is actually backed up by real data. traitor here. You can say that there are other good things about immigration that you like, but there is clearly a link between certain groups that are coming to the UK, particularly those who enter illegally or irregularly, as they're now being called, and committing serious crime. What I found so frustrating about watching you last night, Matt, is when you finally started to bring up what had been happening in that town, in Bradford, this industrial abuse of young girls. And when the first thing you say, when you get cut off by Fiona Bruce, it's when you're mentioning the ethnicity of perpetrators. And suddenly that's the moment where you have to be shut down and we can no longer have this conversation. This is why we need a national inquiry. This is precisely the attitude that we need to root out from a national inquiry.
I mean, Kai, I was struck. We're having a conversation about Andrew, no longer Prince Andrew, of course, but we're talking about the importance of survivors. We're talking about the importance of people's lived experiences and the victims. Yet it seems that conversation is much easier for, let's say, the mainstream to have because it's about truth to power, it's about the royal family. But the conversation about grooming, the conversation about a very different power dynamic where it is people from a minority community abusing members of the majority community, people don't want to know about it.
No, Matt, you and I both know that's nonsense, right? If I started to talk about the scandal of candy shops on Oxford Street right now in this item on your show, you'd be equally frustrated as Fiona Bruce was.
If there was a link to what we're actually debating.
But Matt, you'd been making that point throughout the evening. And what I would say about last night is, and I agree with you, that there are regular Brits all across this country who raise concerns about immigration, and that is completely fair of them to do. But I think what they saw through you, Matt, last night, and what they see is a very singular focus on the ethnicity of perpetrators while ignoring, conveniently, other sexual abuses that take place. And I think they suspect you and suspect your motivations, because where was your advocacy for women and survivors of sexual abuse?
Hang on.
Any time before this grooming gang scandal?
Kai, if I could just bring that in. You mentioned a singular focus on the immigration angle here.
Yes.
That is something that is actually reflected in public opinion. You know, I know it feels sometimes we're talking about immigration endlessly, but that's because it's the number one polling issue for a significant chunk of the country. What I find frustrating is when I listen to feminists who've spent the last 10 years telling me that every single man that wolf whistles you in the street is a rapist in waiting, when there are actual cases of serious sexual abuse, suddenly bury their heads in the sand. And I understand that the right gets a lot of flack because they're seen as being, just jumping on this issue because it's politically convenient. But can we not say that about people like Jess Phillips too?
Can I just say one other thing? Let's just flip this around a minute. Here's why I raise that issue. This is my personal take on this. We're in Bradford. We're in a city that has rejected a local inquiry into the rape gangs. And we're in that city a week after the Labour government has lost the confidence of a number of rape gang victims who have said publicly they don't have confidence in Jess Phillips, they don't have confidence in Keir Starmer. The very next week, we're in Bradford. And yet the primetime flagship television political debate show on the BBC decides that it doesn't want to include a discussion about that issue in Bradford. That's what I found incredibly odd. So I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to force this issue onto the agenda. Now, the only way you could do that is in a conversation about the rights of survivors of sexual abuse. Now, why is it that we can have that conversation regarding Andrew, but we can't have this conversation regarding who happened to be represented that evening, the local Pakistani Muslim community?
No, and you had raised issues of immigration in the show. Those had been brought up, but it's not the singular focus of that show. Now, I think you had your piece, and what I actually said, I was doing a similar show in Welsh that night, and I said, look, we can't be on the left. We are guilty of shutting down debate on this issue. We need to find a way of having a real, honest conversation and not call people racist. I said that. I believe that.
Well, there we go. Hopefully